as she was bending over, Gregg in front of me went and put his hands over her buttocks and then turned to me and went, "Core," and then was laughing as if this
So
was a
just
great
quickly,
joke.
it's important to state that Gregg Wallace's lawyers have strongly denied he engages in sexually harassing behaviour. The BBC has said it will always listen if people want us, if people want to make us aware of something directly. And Gregg Wallace has also hit back, complaining that the women complaining are celebrities of a certain age. Now let's speak with the writer and broadcaster Emma Kennedy. Now Emma took part in Celebrity Masterchef back in 2012. She actually won it. That was 5 years before Asma Mir took part. Emma, thanks very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Now we'll come on to Gregg Wallace's sort of fight back comments in a moment, but I want you to take us back to 2012 and tell us about your experience on Masterchef.
Okay, so it was, we were going into finals week, so it was just the three of us left. And it was one morning and we had to go in one by one to have our photograph taken with the trophy, because obviously at the beginning of the week they don't know who's going to win it and they have to have everything ready for when the winner is announced. And I went into the studio and it was me and Gregg and the photographer's assistant. And the photographer's assistant was a young woman, very attractive young woman. And she was bending over, dealing with some equipment. And as she was bending over, Gregg in front of me went and put his hands over her buttocks and then turned to me and went, "Core," and then was laughing as if this was
just
a great joke.
His hands were on her bottom.
I think now the angle that I was at, I cannot say for 100%, but she did instantly react. So I do believe that he touched her. Yes.
Okay, what happened then?
It was like a combination of things. It's like, I think initially I was just agog that he felt comfortable enough to do that to a woman in front of another woman. But I think, and I am going to make this distinction, I don't think he did it as an act of sexual aggression. I think he did it because he thought it was funny. And I can only speak about, my experience with Gregg. And although I saw quite a lot of inappropriate behaviour, I never sort of felt, okay, you're a sexual predator. I never thought he was evil. But what I did think was that he just doesn't understand that some behaviour is completely inappropriate. And I said to him at the time, "You can't do that stuff, Gregg." And it sort of went in one ear and out the other, I think. But
So just to stop you there, so Emma,
yeah.
What's interesting about this story is you actually said something in the moment, because some people haven't and understand, but you actually said something in the moment, and just tell us how did he react?
Well, as I say, I think it just went in one ear and out the other. I think his core problem is that he just doesn't get it.
And so you then went on to report his behaviour. Who did you report that to, and what happened?
I thought, well, I was very aware that this young woman she wasn't a member of crew. She had just come in that morning. And it was that thing of a young woman has come onto set and the star of the show has done something inappropriate. And in those circumstances, that young woman is never going to say a word. So I told an assistant producer, I told a producer, and I told the head of PR at Masterchef.
And what happened after that?
I have no idea.
And what did when you reported this to these different people, what was their response to you? Did you get any formal message back?
No, I got no formal chat about it whatsoever. I got the sense that this was something that they were well used to, if I'm being honest, and that it was just a sort of roll your eyes and, well, this is Gregg being Gregg.
Right.
That was the sense that I got. And that feeling was compounded a few months later after the show had been broadcast and we had to go and do the Good Food show. And I was sitting with the head of PR at Masterchef, and we were sitting in a pub, and we were there for about an hour. And the only conversation that we were having, and this was coming from her, was, when is the Gregg Wallace problem going to come to light? So this was in
Wow.
2012.
So this is back in 2012.
Yeah.
This is somebody who's very intimately connected with the show, and they are talking about the Gregg Wallace problem back in 2012, like it's an open
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So who do you think has got questions to answer here, Emma?
Um, well, number one, I think Greg would really do well because, as I say, I do not think he is an inherently terrible person. I just think he fundamentally does not understand when he is being inappropriate. I think he has a tendency towards very crude humor, and I will add, I'm from a comedy background. I'm very robust about these things.
Yeah.
I can hear this all the time, and I will just, it will roll over me. But I can absolutely understand that for some people, it makes them feel very, very uncomfortable. And also, as I say, I did not personally experience him being any sort of sexual predator. I think that's a different thing entirely. But I think there are two things to discuss here. Number one, did anyone at the production company ever actually sit him down and say to him, Greg, this stuff, you can't do it. You can't do it. And you can't do it. And you especially can't do it to women. And if that didn't happen, then they've got questions to ask. If that did happen and that was ignored, then obviously Greg has got questions to ask.
Okay.
But I do wonder whether, because obviously on MasterChef, it's made by an independent production company for the BBC, and I think there is probably a degree of keeping it within the production company. I do not know whether anything was passed upwards.
Okay. And also, we do know that particularly, and this has happened, on many, many different occasions, that, when a show is incredibly successful and, people are reluctant to often challenge the talent on various
Yeah.
things. We know that from many different cases. And look, Emma, has anyone else been in touch with you to share any
Yes.
experiences?
I've had many women. I've had multiple messages actually from people who weren't in the celebrity version of MasterChef, who also found his behaviour inappropriate. And I've been told about an incident that happened in 2017 at an RAF base where he was showing inappropriate photos of his wife to young female cadets.
Gosh, okay. Now it is, it's worth sort of just stating that Gregg Wallace's lawyers have strongly denied that he engages in any sexually harassing behaviour. And Emma, stay with me because I do want to get your thoughts on the next segment of this story, because in response to these mounting allegations against him, Gregg Wallace posted this video on Instagram this morning. I mean, he's mounting quite a fight back. Let's have a listen.
Now, I've been doing MasterChef for 20 years, amateur, celebrity and professional MasterChef. And I think in that time, I have worked with over 4,000 contestants of all different ages, all different backgrounds, all walks of life. And apparently now, I'm reading in the paper, there's been 13 complaints in that time. Now, in the newspaper, I can see the complaints coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age just from Celebrity MasterChef. This isn't right. In 20 years, over 20 years of television, can you imagine how many women, female contestants on MasterChef, have made sexual remarks or sexual innuendo? Can you imagine?
So that was Gregg Wallace mounting his fight back, basically saying these are middle-class women of a certain age who are celebrities. Now, I want to get Emma's reaction to this, but I also want to bring in another guest, Victoria Smith, who is a writer, an excellent writer and author of the book Hags, The Demonisation of Middle-Aged Women. Victoria, welcome.
Thank you.
Emma, I'll come to you first, then I'll come to you, Victoria. Emma, what do you make of this this sort of defence or this fight back that Gregg Wallace is mounting?
I mean, I fully expect that Greg would want to defend himself, and he has every right to do so. I would question the thinking behind blaming women of a certain age who are all celebrities when we know that the initial investigation is primarily from junior female staff, and that we now know that there are complaints from people who were in non-celebrity versions of MasterChef. But it doesn't matter what age, any complaint that comes from people it's the allegations still stand, and I think we all make mistakes, and I think all of us can be sympathetic to that. But when those mistakes become a pattern of behaviour spanning decades, that is when it becomes problematic. And it just strikes me as ridiculous that he's trying to shift the narrative and make people discuss that somehow middle class people, bearing in mind he's a multimillionaire TV presenter, that he somehow has a problem with the middle class.
Emma, thanks for that. Stay with us. Let's hear what Victoria Smith's got to say. Victoria, your reaction to that?
I mean, yes, I completely agree with Emma. It's just, there are complaints sort of at so many levels. And I think he is kind of going for this, focusing on the women's privilege and both their age. And it kind of reminds me a bit of the whole Karen debate that was going on a few years ago, this way of demonizing older women, particularly privileged older women who make complaints. And I think one of the things that I kind of was exploring a bit in my book, Hags, was that older women, they have historically served as a kind of, they've served to criticize and restrict male sexual entitlement. They've kind of had this, I think, particularly more privileged women, particularly those who have a degree of security, more experience. And, we also talk about women, once you hit the menopause, maybe you start caring a bit less about these aspects, that sometimes we are able to speak out more. And then the pushback is, oh, you're just privileged, almost as though therefore what you're focusing on is trivial. And these things aren't trivial. They really affect women's self-esteem, and they really can affect their progress in the workplace, and they really affect just how they feel in themselves and in their bodies. And there's that kind of, you're just privileged, and there's also this, you're prudish, you're kind of this old prude shrewish woman who just doesn't get a joke. And
you're an old crone, and you're unattractive, and you're bitter,
yes.
and all of that kind of thing.
And he's trying to sort of pick up on those things, I think. And I think it's actually working. I think I've seen but I don't think I've seen anyone who's really bought into that, which I found quite heartening.